where you were born and when you were born.
I'm Henry J. Figurski. I go by Hank. And I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania. I still live there. Born June 11th, 1921.
Tell me about your mom and dad and...
Well, they're both immigrants. They both came from Poland. My mother, she came over when she was about 5 years old, I believe. My dad, he came over when he was about 14, 16, somewhere around there.
Okay, did any of your family have any military history in their background?
No, they didn't. I was born the first of, we had a family of 8 boys. I'm the oldest, and there was 8 of us, and still 7 left. Only 1 passed away. I'm the oldest one, and the youngest one's 64. So there was a real circus at home.
Yeah, I bet. Your mom had a great time.
Yeah, she did.
Okay, I want to know where you were on Pearl Harbor Day and how you heard about it.
Pearl Harbor, I was at home, and I heard that on the radio. Of course, everybody did, and it was a real shocker. Just like now with this bombing over here, it's exactly the same feeling.
How old were you the day, Pearl Harbor?
Pearl Harbor, that was in 41, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 41? That would make me 20.
20,
Yeah.
20 years old.
So I tried to enlist. I tried out for the Air Corps as a cadet pilot. I took a test, but I didn't complete it. And so I qualified for a glider pilot, and I decided I didn't care for that. So I waited and I got drafted, and I got into the 12th Army as a radio operator. They took my test showed that I had potential for a radio operator, and so then when I joined the 12th Army when they activated, and I went to the 12th Army Radio School, and I placed in the top 10.
Was this in Kentucky or here in Barkley?
No, in Kentucky.
Okay. Where were you? Where did you take your basic training at?
In Camp Campbell. Mm-hmm. Camp Campbell. It's Fort Campbell now, Kentucky.
Talk to me. Tell us about your radio training. I mean, some of us might have heard about it, but act like we know nothing about it. What's your day look like? The training you received.
Well, first of all, school. You know, that's where we got to train to be radio operators. Well, you'd have a headset on and listen to different groups of code groups of dots and dashes, and that's how you learn. To this day, I can remember the whole alphabet. I can't believe I can't. I don't remember something I do 2 minutes ago, but I still can remember the dots and dashes.
So did you use Morse code?
Morse code. We also know how to learned how to use the voice radio too, and the procedures, the different rules of radio. It was fun. I enjoyed it.
Tell me some of the rules.
But I think the reason I had an aptitude, I'm a music buff. I like music. I don't play music, but I used to this day dance. I was a real jitterbug. In fact, I won some contests in jitterbug. To tell you the truth, I was 65, and my wife passed away sooner. And we were at a New Year's Eve party, a dinner dance, and my niece dragged me out. They had a jitterbug contest there. The young couples there. Guess who won? Me. So that was my last victory in 65.
Oh, 65. Okay.
But I like music, and I think that helped me with the radio.
Tell me the rules that they taught you for, did you say the voice radio?
Yeah, certain procedures, so you know when to let the other person speak. You tell them over means it's your turn to speak, and then when you want to end your conversation, you usually tell them 10-4, Roger out. That means you're all done. And then, of course, we used all kinds of codes to encode certain messages, and we learned how to use an encoder and decoder, and it's just groups of 5 letters. And then when you received a message, you place it through the decoder, and we used a certain code for a certain time, and we knew the key, and that's how you got your message through.
Okay, you've lost us. So, give me an example. Give me.
Well, we got a lot of training after the school. We'd go out to have field problems out in the field, in our half tracks, and well, the other units were in tanks and half tracks, and that's where we practiced our Morse code, you know. But I'll tell you, we use more voice code in operation than we did shortwave.
Tell me about the decoder. I don't think I understand about the decoding that you mentioned a while ago.
Yeah, well, see, there's like 5 wheels, and you set a button, and it's certain. If you spell a word out, A would be something else. Maybe it would be J or something like that. See, and each one is said differently. So when you say you spell radio, it would come out maybe X O F U. It's illegible. You wouldn't know what it is. But if you place it in the decoder, then it's set so that it'll spell the word in the correct manner.
Okay. Did y'all have any special? Was there any special kind, like, you know, in the Pacific they use the Navajo or whatever?
Well, I'll tell you. Yeah, I was just going to say that. In fact, in our group, I started it. Whenever I was done with my message, I used to hit the key. I'd go da-da-da-da-da, which spelled like EFM. It's spelled EFM, but it's just a sound. That's why I said da-da-da-da. Shaving a haircut, 2 bits. So everybody started something like that. So when this come on, we knew who was on the key, and that was something that had just started.
So each of y'all had kind of your own little goodbye, farewell.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was one way.
Yeah. Okay. And then when would you use your Morse code? When would specifically?
Well, anytime you send a message, you send it in. Oh, you mean the shortwave radio? Well, when certain distance apart, you know, then we'd use more, because voice radio in those days didn't carry as far as shortwave. That's when we'd use the shortwave. But nowadays, geez, they carry a little thing around and go all around the world with it.
How far would the voice activation phones go?
The voice?
Yeah, the voice. How long did you have to run wires and stuff?
No, it was through the airwaves, but it would carry only a couple miles, maybe, not even that sometimes, depending on the topography and the place and stuff like that, and the weather and everything like that.
When did you finish your training? Where you kind of, it's basically learning a new alphabet, isn't it? Kind of just a whole new language.
Oh, yeah. You mean the school?
Uh-huh.
I don't remember how long it was. It was only maybe a few months. And then you learned certain procedures, you know, from the books, and certain rules of radio, stuff like that, besides learning the Morse code and everything.
In what situations would you just have silence where they wouldn't allow you to use radio contact?
Well, that's ahead of time. You designate a certain period of time. Usually you get a message maybe by a carrier or something like that, and you know when to keep quiet.
When y'all were at, you did the Tennessee maneuvers?
Yes.
Tell me about what's your role in it and what you did every day and as a radio.
As a radio man,
operator.
well, I used to have to stick with my radio with the half track, and from there I'd send out the messages. I'd receive the message from our command post by courier, you know, messenger, and he'd bring it in, and I'd just send the message out.
Okay.
And if I receive messages, same thing. It goes back to my command post.
So you basically, how big? Tell me how big the radio was that was in the half track.
Well, the short wave was, maybe it was about, they have one over here, is about, I'd say about 3 feet across and maybe 2.5 feet tall. The voice radio It was longer. It was maybe about 4 foot by about 2 feet. It had a mic on it. You activate it and send your message.
So were you with the, where would you get your information? Who was relaying information to you to go?
From the command post, you know. You mean to send out the messages? Yeah, you get your orders from the command post, which our commander, field commander, and whatever you want to send out to different units. We also had telephone wire too, which we had a string of telephone wires so once in a while to keep contact with. But those didn't rely on them too much because the Germans would cut the wires when they'd find. And one time I found myself trying to string a wire. I remember from one German village to another, and as a rule, there was myself and 2 other helpers, and we started stringing wire and try to put it up over the trees. Well, every time we'd come out, here comes the mortar shells, and we'd hit the ground or a foxhole. Every time they had a zeroed in from a different village, so we couldn't do anything. And then we got a couple of P-47 planes, American planes, come by, and they started bombing the place. So I said, "Let's go." And I said, "We're not laying in the trees." We just grabbed the reel and we just ran to our command post on the ground. So it was a lot of different things, and it was a nice group to work with. You know, everybody had the same interests in mind, and it was fun.
When you got to Barclay, how many were in your unit? What was your relationships with some of the guys?
The communications group, you know. Well, there was usually there was a radio operator, and you had an assistant helping you.
You can just take it up off at the top. Oh, okay, you got it. There we go. I forgot. Okay. Okay, you had the communication group. You had an assistant.
Yeah, and you'd have, well, each company would have so many radio operators. Well, let's see. In our company, I can't really remember now. It was about 2 radio sergeants. Then you'd have a couple assistants for each company. Then you have a radio sergeant who took care, in each company, that took care of the communication section. And you'd have a maintenance man. He would fix the equipment, repair it. So, and that's the group we hung around. We got together because we were in contact all the time. So.
The 516th AIB. So you had a communications unit within.
Each unit, each company had a communication unit.
Okay. Tell me, when you were out here at Barclay, what is one thing that you remember? You can close your eyes and remember about your experience at Camp Barclay.
About my what?
Your experiences at Camp Barclay.
Well, we'd go out in the field, problems, just practice. One experience I had, I got married.
I was fixing to ask you about getting married next. Tell me about it.
I had a furlough over here, from here. So I went home and I got married. And
she was where?
She was at home in Erie, Pennsylvania. I got married, and she wanted to come back home with me over here to camp. And I said, "No way. You're not coming over here unless I get a place." So I come here, and I went out looking for a place. Well, they had at the USO, they had a corporal over there. He had a desk, and he was helping people find apartments. And I'd go there. No dice. You'd have a line of guys waiting, and I'd come up, and he says, "What?" He says, "Your wife isn't here?" He says, "You guys here, all kinds of guys, their wives are here waiting for apartments." I said, "Oh, geez." So then I got in touch with her. I said, "Maybe you better come down because I can't get an apartment with that one." So she says, okay. So she was on her way, and it was a weekend. It was a weekend, Saturday. I went out, I said, I'll take another shot at it. So I went over there, and there's that corporal, and then there's a line. I was about maybe about number 20, and it was about 35 of them standing in line, and somebody walks in and talking to the corporal. It was a guy from a different unit that was based at Barclay. It was a medical outfit, I guess, and he was telling me that the duplex apartment next to him was vacant, and he, wants to report it to the guy, and I heard it, and I said, and I yelled out, I'll take it, and everybody's up in the arms, they're all screaming and hollering, and this corporal says, hey, you're going to have to live with the guy, you pick him out. So he said, well, that sergeant over there spoke up, so I was so lucky, and it was a beautiful apartment. It was a duplex place, and in fact, I had the steward. I don't have the picture, but I brought the picture with me. We went out hunt. We see if I could find it. Well, we were hunting. I guess it's gone.
What did your wife do while you were here? Y'all were here for how many months together?
She didn't even work. Some girls worked. She didn't. She just she helped out her neighbor over there, and the funny part about it, later on, somebody moved out of that duplex, and so I got the sergeant that was my boss. He was a tech sergeant, and he needed a place. His wife does. He had people lived in sheds. You can't believe just to be together, and so I told him, hey, there's a good place. So he says, okay. So I got it for him. So what happens? Well, it was just like a job. We'd go home after 5 o'clock. Well, I used to go home earlier than he did. He'd let me go. And my wife would meet the bus stop was right at the corner. She'd run out up there, and Vivian was my sergeant's wife. She couldn't understand. I'm always earlier. He says, you're his boss. How come Hank's here all the time and you're not? So I told my wife, hey, I'll meet you at the U. So, but we had a great time. It was a great honeymoon. 10 months we spent, then we shipped out from there.
And she went back home at that point?
She's gone now. I lost her. But we had a great time.
Tell me about getting to France. What you remember between Barclay and France?
Well, I'll tell you. Well, we went through England. We had a crossing. We were to leave, I can't remember what time. We were waiting in New York. We were supposed to take the Queen Mary, was it? We were scheduled to go across on a Queen Mary. Well, there was a hurricane hit the coast at that time. It delayed us a couple of days, and they didn't want to send the Queen Mary out in the bad weather, so a ship came in from Europe, full of German prisoners. It was the Princess of Australia, and so they took the prisoners got off, and they prepared it for us. Instead of Queen Mary, we got the Princess Elizabeth, and it wasn't the Queen Mary. And we had our bunks. There was a big cafeteria there, and mess hall, and we strung up hammocks up above the tables, and that's where we slept.
How many men were on that ship?
Oh, I can't tell you.
Any idea? Thousands?
Oh yeah, it was a big ship, but it wasn't like the Queen Mary. And it was a pretty rough ride. I don't remember how many ships in the convoy. It was a pretty big convoy. We heard some firing going on because there was some submarines were around, German submarines, but we made it safely, and then we stayed in England for, I don't know, and it wasn't very long, maybe about 6 weeks, I guess, in a tent camp. And from there we took off across the channel, and that was a big ride. It was an LST, which carried all the tanks, and then half-tracks were shackled down. It was a flat-bottom boat. And boy, every time you hit that wave, that thing would shake, and look at those tanks tied up with iron chains, and you wonder if they're going to hold. But
how many tanks would fit on one LST?
Oh, I couldn't.
Give us kind of how big was the thing?
It was pretty big. It was like a big barge. and the back end would drop off, and they'd draw a lot off of there. But then we landed in Cherbourg, I guess it was. That was a sight. You hit the beach and you look, and everything was blackened, and it was nothing but rubble. And you know there's people buried under that. It was a dismal sight. And so we went quite a way in, and then we camped out in tents for a while. It was kind of a wet, muddy place. And then slowly, surely, we got in a little deeper and started our march.
Was there ever a day that was like today is our first battle, or was it just sort of hit and miss all the way along?
No, I think it was around Christmas. Was it 44? I can't remember. 44, I think. It was around that time when we first hit our first battle. I think the first town we hit was Utweiler. That was the first one we took. And it was cold. It was really cold. In fact, I remember, boy, I was on the radio and it was so cold. And I was sitting in my half-track, and it's got a steel floor, and my feet were hurting so bad. And it was dark late at night, and everybody had to keep quiet. And I cried, they hurt so bad. So I said, I got to take my shoes off. I took my shoes off, my socks, lit a Coleman lamp. It was covered half-track so you can see, but we wouldn't dare put it. You're not supposed to light anything. But I was hurting so bad. And I finally got my feet warmed up. But after that exercise, a lot of the guys had frostbite and everything. And I was close to it because to this day my toes are always numb. But that was our first experience.
What was it? What was the feel of, besides your feet just hurting, or were you just thinking about your feet? It was so bad.
Well,
what was it like to be facing that first battle?
Well, it's, I'll tell you, you're young and you don't realize actually what you're doing. I always tell everybody, right now when I watch a History Channel, that's when you realize what it really meant. At that time you're a young kid and you just did what he told you to do. But you're afraid. There's no question about everybody was afraid. But you did what, you had pride. You wouldn't you don't want anybody else to know that you're afraid. But one thing about this experience is we were lucky because we went through this whole thing, the 12th Army that was activated. We had real good training, long training, maneuvers. And we were through all this, and then we went to combat. We stuck together, except for some of the guys got wounded and some got killed. That's why there's such a camaraderie now, and you feel so close. I spend more time with them guys than I did with my brothers, my family, because we slept together, ate together, played together 24 hours. That's why everybody's so close.
How many are still, have you kept up with the guys that were in your original unit? How many survived?
Yeah. Yeah, we kept in touch a lot through these reunions, and we brought when we were younger, we were raising our families. They had a big thing going on for the kids. They had special things going on for the kids. And they'd have a ballroom for them with a record hop, and we'd have our big banquet and dance. It was a great thing, and we were young. I have to laugh now because when we were younger, the things would stop about 1 o'clock, and we'd take off, roaming around town looking for something else to do at 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, 11 o'clock, everybody's going to their rooms.
Yeah, that's right. Tell me about when y'all hit action, Armored Infantry Battalion, like the riflemen and everything were up in front. The distance, what was the distance? How far did y'all have to keep it back to keep the radio and the half-track and everything?
Yeah, some of them that had smaller radios were right there up front with them. They carried some of the radios. The foot soldiers, the riflemen, they had the roughest part. They're right up in front. And then the tanks were with them too. And like, I was fortunate enough, I was in a headquarters company, so we stayed back a little bit. And but the other guys in it all the time. We'd get mostly, the artillery fire was awful, It just You don't know where to hide when it starts coming in. And so that was the worst threat for us. But these guys up front, they get that, and plus all the rifle fire and machine gun fire and stuff like that. And once in a while they'd send a radio up front. I remember when we were in Hurlsheim, that was the worst battle. And they sent me up, and my assistant, we went up from Rohweiler to Waterworks, and we couldn't get across the bridge. It was a wooden bridge that was knocked off. Tank couldn't go over, heavy tank, so we went in a armored car, and we crossed the bridge, and we went into the Waterworks, and all hell was going on over there. And I have to laugh because the sergeant that assigned me to the job, he was kind of chicken heart. He went with us. So my radio operator assistant and I, myself, and Sergeant Clubb, he was with me. And we were there, and we were on each side of him. He got hit with shrapnel, and they took him away. And there was wounded all over the place. They're looking for volunteers. So my radio operator said, we grabbed one litter with a wounded guy, and we had to carry him across that bridge, and the tank would be waiting on the other side because it couldn't cross. And we put the wounded on a tank and grab a litter and go back. As it was a dark night, and as we were coming across that bridge, they shot up a flare. There was a German machine gun covering the bridge. A flare went up and it lights it up like day. So there's one sergeant behind, he hollered, freeze. Well, we're supposed to just stop. You don't move because it's harder to see. If you move, they can see you. And everybody froze on the bridge, and the flare sputtered out. So then everybody took off. But talk about getting goosebumps. But so you get experiences like that you go through every now and then. But these guys up front, I'm telling you, they had it rough.
Did y'all have the white? I've seen pictures of the white raincoats or white hat. Was that what y'all had when y'all were?
Yeah, the riflemen had those out there, yeah, because they were up front.
What did you have when you were going across the bridge? What did you have on?
Oh, we were just regular uniform.
Regular
Yeah. Regular fatigues.
What is there a moment at Hurlsheim that's sort of stamped in your mind?
Well, that was the big one for me. But the boys in the rifle company, they had a rough time over there. They were trapped and everything. It was because there was we got the wrong information. There was to be only so many, and it was 10 times what they suspected. So they just kept going and going, making it look like there was a lot of people on our side, but there was that was our worst battle. We got hit hard.
How many did y'all lose at the 56? How many, do you have any idea?
No, I can't give you the figure.
It was a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When did you, after Hurlsheim, what did y'all do to kind of reprocess, reconnect, kind of get your senses
they
together?
usually pull your back. We were relieved by another outfit. Another outfit comes in, they take over, and we'd go back and recuperate, and you replace certain people that were wounded or killed. You get new replacements come in, and you get your strength back, and then you were assigned a different place to go.
How did the men recuperate from something like that? And did it vary with the men? What did you observe?
Well, you just grow into it. When you first see something like that, it really strikes you. I remember going through a town. We'd be chasing the Germans, and then we'd stop for a while. We were held up, and going out the back door of the half track to get out for a break, and you have just run over a body, and see something like that, it really turns your stomach. Even if the Germans laying around, but after a while you get used to it. You have to overlook it. But that was hard to get used to.
What in you? I'm assuming some people never quite adjusted to that.
Well, some have had a lot harder time with it, and
What strengths in you helped you to survive all that?
Just being with friends, leaning on each other. That's about it.
After Herlesheim, where did the 56th go from there? Were y'all in the?
I don't remember what was our next. I know we went to the Colmar Pocket. We were with General Patton for a while, for 3 days. Jeez, I'll tell you, that was an experience with Patton. He didn't believe in stopping. We just went day and night, and we didn't get very much rest.
What period of time? I've heard y'all talk about this. How many days are we talking from the time y'all had to start and keep on rolling? Do you have a sense of that?
Well, we were in, let's see, I don't know, I can't tell you. When we got into action was December. We were going for about 8 months and get a break here and there, but after starting was going slow, but after a while, we had the Germans on the run. It was unbelievable. You would see tanks and tracks going through the streets at about 40 miles an hour. And you'd go through the villages. What struck me is we'd go through the villages and all the houses would have bed sheets on the front of the house and coming out the windows, surrender. And some of the people would stand on the sideline and they'd just be watching. Like they're in shock. They couldn't believe it was happening, that the German army was going that fast, and we're right behind them. What struck me funny is a lot of times when there would be action going on the streets, and you'd see people moving around, and people live, there's fire going on and everything, and they're just ducking and out. Something we didn't have to worry about. We knew our families at home were safe. And till now, something else happened.
Was that, of course you were very young, did that make a difference that you were fighting on foreign soil?
Oh, yeah. Everybody. Not only young, but your parents and brothers and sisters, you didn't have to worry about them. That's a world of difference.
Tell me about, what did you learn about yourself during this war?
Well, I'll tell you, you really mature, I think. But you become a man real quick. But I'll tell you one thing. See, the war ended. At first, we weren't allowed to socialize with the people, with the German people. But after a while, they lifted it, and we got to mingling with the people. And you realize people are people alike. They do things for us, wash our clothes and everything. And it's the little people. It's funny that you have wars, because the people are the same all over. Once you know them, you got to be friends with them. To tell you the truth. Funny thing, my granddaughter married an East German. He's the greatest guy. And she did her graduate study in Heidelberg in Germany, and she met this guy from Leipzig. He was going to school there, and they got married. And she lived over there. She moved over there, and they had 2 little girls. I got 2 great granddaughters, and she lived there for 7 years. And they just moved. She got a little homesick, and he came here a few times. They vacationed over here, and he got to like the American life real well. And so they moved, and they live in New Mexico now. I haven't even visited them yet. When she was there, it was about 4 or 5 years ago, she was after me. She said, "Grandpa, come down. You got to come down and visit." Because they traveled all around her, and they got into Poland a lot. And I had an uncle there yet left. I lost contact with him, and So I says, okay. So I went and got my passport, and I was going to fly down there, and I got some heart problems. So I wound up, I had quadruple bypass, and so I never did get to go. And so I feel bad about that, but it would have been nice.
Tell me, is there a commander or a person in your memory during the war that stands out and you really hold him in high esteem?
Well, of course, everybody knows about Eisenhower, and I think he did a great job. And our, who was this? General Patch, I think, that was commander of the 7th Army Group. And I thought a lot of him. He was a sensible commander, I think. He wasn't like Pat and gung-ho.
Tell me about what you thought of Patton.
Well, I think myself, he was an egotist. They call him blood and guts, and the guy. We always had a saying, yeah, our blood and his guts. But I think he went a little bit too fast.
For y'all that were
Yeah.
heading. Tell me about when you found out y'all were going to be the mystery division. Do you remember all
We
this?
didn't know that. That's what they noticed. Yeah, well, I mean, we didn't know we were called that until later on we found that out.
Did you really take the insignias off?
Yeah, we took all it. They took all the insignias, they painted them off the, you have them on the bumpers, on the tracks and everything. And nobody knew who we were. So we didn't get credit for some of the good things we did.
Tell me, when you started going through Germany, you talked about the flags and everything flying in the windows. What was the feeling as you drove through Germany and you thought that this was? Did you have a sense of it was fixing to end?
Well, you could sense it because we had them on a run then. But I felt bad because I've seen little kids there, German kids. And of course, I had seven brothers at home, young, so it kind of reminded me of them. And when we'd have a kitchen come up and have real good cooked food and everything, when we had the time to do that, they'd come up and we'd get hot meals and everything. And we'd empty our mess kits into the garbage, the leftovers. And the little kids would be standing with little pails, They wanted the garbage. So a lot of guys would go up there for seconds and give them the good stuff. You feel kind of bad to see those kids standing there. It's a shame it has to happen, but that's war.
What did you learn about yourself during the war?
One thing I knew, I could take discipline, because I come from a family with discipline. My dad had a rule with an iron hand, with 8 boys in the family, and I noticed some of the guys they had a rough time adjusting to discipline. And there's some dandy stories. A lot of guys would take off and go AWOL and come back, and discipline was hard to live by for them. But we all managed, and it was a great experience, really.
Is there one person that was a friend of yours that you remember really well? And some experience that you had with that person?
You mean in the service? Yeah, I had a real good friend, Dave Huber. We got in the service together in this division, and we got close. He was from Minnesota. And I know we got close, so he had his girlfriend come visit the camp in Campbell. And my girlfriend, which was a wife later on, we weren't married, we had him come down, and they spent a week over, and we had a good time at the USOs and everything. And then I got married, and he didn't get married. And so we were real close. He was right in my same company, but he got transferred to a company as a communications sergeant. But he kept contact because the communications was in contact all the time. So our first contact with the enemy, he was wounded, and he was wounded pretty bad in his leg, and he was shipped home, and I haven't seen him since. And we corresponded, and I found out that he married the girl he was with in camp, and then I lost contact. I didn't know what happened. I wrote to him, nothing happened. So then I got a notice from him. It was a notice of a baby boy was born, and he sent me an announcement. But on it, I noticed it wasn't the same name of his girlfriend. It was somebody else. I couldn't figure that out. And then I lost contact with him again. So then we had a reunion in Minneapolis. That's his hometown. So we got on the phone and called all the Hubers in the book, and we couldn't find anything about him. And so it was getting ready for the banquet. It was Saturday morning, and my wife went down to have her hair done and everything. And she come back, she says, "You won't believe what?" It says, the girl that was working on my hair, she was asking me a lot of stuff, and I was telling them about this Dave. We were trying to get a hold of him. In fact, I named my oldest boy because that was my namesake. And she says, "Dave Huber, I know, he lived down the block from us." She says, "You got to be kidding. We've been trying to get him." He says, "Wow, a funny thing happened." She says, he got married, and then his wife died. His wife died. This would be Carol, the first one. And he took off. They didn't know what happened to him. Then he come back, he got married again, and I guess they had the baby, and his other wife died. And then she said, nobody knows what happened to him. And he was the kind of a fellow that he didn't drink or anything, but so I don't know what happened to the guy to this day. I tried we got on the net, my kids got on the net, tried to contact any Hubers and never got any good results. So I don't know what happened to the guy. So I felt bad about it because we were really close.
Can you tell me the closest you ever came to combat and what that was like?
Well,
I mean, you were in the midst of it, yeah. But when you the half track, the radio, the everything.
Well, I wasn't into it like some of those foot soldiers. But well, you just do what you think you should do. You're scared, but you got to keep moving. You do what you were trained to do. You just force yourself to do it.
So y'all got pretty close to who was your half track driver and who all was there? Do you remember?
Yeah, and I was with the executive officer S2, and I had and the half track driver, and then an assistant radio operator, and myself in our track. We were like the part of the command, you know.
It was not an armed half track, was it?
Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, they had a gun on it and everything.
Tell me about the gun and the power and stuff.
Well, it was a .50 caliber gun, but the thing that one thing I noticed, you know, the Germans had the first jet planes, and we were out lining up to go and attack early in the morning, going through some hills, roads, moving on. All of a sudden you hear this noise. Everybody's saying, "What's that?" You know how you hear a jet at that time, and nobody knew what that was. And up over the hill comes two jets. Everybody hit the ground because they were firing machine guns, and you just says, "Wow, what is that?" And then later on, you see a few of those. And in fact, we were watching a dogfight. Some of our planes, the P-38s, had the twin tails. They tried to bomb. They shot one down. Everybody's cheering. We're all firing. They're firing the guns off from the tracks, and they shot it down. But They had the jets, but they were running out of fuel, and that's what saved us. We were going on the Autobahn, and they have the jets in a brush, and they use the Autobahn, which is an expressway. They use it as a runway for the planes, but they were all sitting there, no fuel.
Did you, as y'all went through, did you ever see any of the death camps or the concentration
I wasn't close. I just saw some of them, the survivors, you know, and they're just walking skeletons. What they were. I wasn't there up front where some of the guys got inside and they got to see the bodies and everything. But I myself didn't see that.
So you saw just the people after
Yeah,
they were
yeah,
released?
that was something.
Did y'all have any idea, you as soldiers, what you were seeing? I mean, did you have any, I guess was it a secret that they even existed? Or?
Yeah, well, you know, we never expected anything. We didn't know what, it was a shock to us. You never heard anything about that. Now you read about it, they said there was some inkling that they should have known, but we never knew. That was, when we saw that, we were really shocked.
Just have a few more questions. Was being a radio operator and being in the 56th what you expected it to be? Was it the same or different of what you expected?
No, that's what I would expect.
Did they verbally express that to you, or what to expect the carnage? Did they train you to kind of know that?
Oh, they you had a program that you followed. They just teach you certain things and how you go about it, and then we'd go out in the field and practice everything, sending messages to each other, and by the time you got across, you knew what you were doing.
So you knew before. You were the contact person that you relayed orders from the command?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sent out the messages from the command, you know.
And then would you all meet in the evening at the command post and do some of that stuff?
Soon you get the message, you'd send it out to the command post. You know, just little ways there'd be commander would be there, and they'd come give me the messages, and we'd send them out.
When you, as this tape will be in the museum as a permanent story of your experiences, is there something you would like to leave on tape? Some thoughts or some feelings or things about the war or things to keep it from happening again? Is there one message you would like to tell us?
Wow. You wonder why we ever have wars, because like I says, when you mix in with the people, they're all alike. They're nice people. And you wonder why you should have wars. It should be a different way. And like the United Nations and stuff like that, you should resolve your differences right there. Why do we have to go to war to resolve the differences? But like this case here, some of the people you can't talk to, so. And I believe strongly that we shouldn't let this go. We gotta, because I always said, well, if World War II started, I remember Prime Minister Chamberlain from England, he was appeasing the Germans, okay, this time it's over, everything's going to be all right. You give them a little more, and then at the end you had to go to war anyway, and you give them too much room. So you got to stop it right away. It's got to be done right away.
And one last question. What got you through the war?
What got me through the war? My family. You think about the family. I enjoyed the experience of Army life and everything, but it's missing home. Your family comes first. I always think family is the reason for living. I watch other families and I see a nice family. I just like to watch them because it's such a nice feeling. And I think that's what it's all about, family life.
Is there anything I've forgotten?
No.
No? Okay, well, I appreciate your time. I really do.
Well, I didn't think I'd ever do this, but my kids were telling me